The last thing I remember from my childhood home was the smell of lemon cleaner and the sound of the refrigerator humming. I was 15, coming back from a shift at the auto shop where I swept floors after school. The house was too quiet when I stepped inside. No TV murmuring from the living room. No clatter of dishes. Just a single sheet of lined paper sitting on the counter, weighed down by an empty coffee mug. "You'll figure it out." That was it. 5 words. No signature. No explanation. My mom, my dad, and my little sister were gone. And they stayed gone. I thought maybe they were playing some cruel joke. Maybe they'd gone on a trip without telling me, and they'd walk back through the door with excuses and souvenirs. But days passed. I called. I waited. I slept on the couch, then on the floor when the utilities got cut. I ate stale cereal and cold beans from the can. After a week, the landlord showed up. Said the lease had been canceled early. I had 7 days to get out. That was the beginning of my real life. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just packed what I could into a backpack and walked out the door. I slept behind the rec center for 2 nights. Then in the back of old man Rudy's junkyard, tucked between rusted-out pickups and spiders. I was nobody's son anymore. Nobody's brother. I was just me. 12 years later, I came back. Not to forgive. Not to forget. I came back to find out why. What kind of people abandon a kid and think he'll just figure it out? Turns out, the truth wasn't just cruel, it was twisted in ways I never saw coming. I pulled into Millstone Hollow just past dusk. Town hadn't changed much. Same sagging gas station on the edge. Same Baptist church with the peeling white steeple. The kind of place where everyone's truck is older than their dog, and rumors outlive the people who started them. I parked outside the diner. Miss Edna's, still flickering in half-lit neon. The same spot where I used to bust tables and steal fries when no one was looking. I wasn't sure who I expected to recognize me, but nobody even blinked. That's the thing about vanishing, people forget fast. Easier that way. I ordered coffee and watched the door. Waitress didn't even ask for a name. Just poured, gave a half smile, and moved on. She looked like she'd seen enough tired faces to know when not to ask questions. The real plan was across town. There was an address in my phone, not one I'd memorized, just something I found in an old envelope from child services when I'd tried, once, to track them down. My parents had filed a change of address the same day they left. Same county, just far enough to be out of reach. Cowards didn't even leave the state. I didn't have a speech. No grand confrontation planned. Just years of silence coiled up behind my ribs, waiting for somewhere to go. So I drove. The house was bigger than I expected. Not fancy, but nice enough. White siding. Porch swing. 2-story. Lights on in the front room. I sat in the truck for 10 minutes, motor running, wondering what kind of people walked away from their child and still had the nerve to put up Christmas lights. Then the door opened. A girl, maybe 10, stepped out in pink pajamas, holding a plate of cookies. Behind her, a man I recognized even after all this time, my father. He looked older, grayer, but he still had the same slow, deliberate way of standing like the world owed him something. "Can I help you?" he asked, squinting through the dark. I stepped out of the truck. "Yeah," I said. "I think we got some unfinished business." His face drained of color. The girl backed into the doorway. He said one word, like a curse or a prayer. "Jacob." It hit me sideways. He hadn't forgotten. He hadn't even tried. But what came next, that knocked the wind out of me? Because from behind him, another voice called out. A voice I knew better than my own heartbeat. "Who's at the door, honey?" she asked. My mother. Alive, well, wearing a cardigan and carrying a tray of brownies like nothing ever happened. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "Jacob, what are you doing here?" Like I was the one who'd disappeared. I didn't answer her right away. I couldn't. I was too busy trying to keep my hands from shaking. That voice, soft, syrupy, like a schoolteacher in church, didn't match the woman who once threw a plate at my head because I forgot to take out the trash. It didn't match the woman who left me behind with nothing but a note. "I'm here," I said slowly, "because 12 years ago, you left your son behind." My father stepped forward. "Jacob, this ain't the time." I looked at the little girl peeking out behind him. "You mean to tell me there was a better one?" My mother's face shifted, just slightly. A tightness around the eyes. A flicker of recognition she tried to swallow. "We thought you were staying with a friend," she said, smooth as silk. "Don't lie," I snapped. "You left me a note on the kitchen counter. Said, you'll figure it out." That wiped the charm off her face. Her lips pressed into a thin line. My father looked down at the porch boards like they might open and swallow him whole. Then came the voice that cut through all of it. "Who's he?" the girl asked, stepping onto the porch. And that's when I noticed something else. Behind the screen door, framed in yellow kitchen light, stood a boy couldn't have been more than 17, tall, lanky, with the same blue eyes I saw every morning in the mirror. As that didn't come from my father. My stomach turned. "He's your brother," my mother said without flinching. I nearly staggered. "Brother?" I looked at her, then at the boy, then back to her. "You had another kid?" "He's adopted," she replied quickly. "We took him in after we moved. After they moved. After they left me." My father cleared his throat. "We couldn't. We didn't know how to raise you, Jacob. You were always too serious. Too grown." My voice broke. "I had to be. You gave me no choice." The boy stepped forward now, cautious. "I didn't know. I mean, they never said they had another kid." I couldn't even look at him. My heart ached for him, but I wasn't ready to feel that. Not yet. My mother looked like she wanted to explain everything in one breath. But I wasn't here for that. Not anymore. "I came to ask why," I said. "Why you left me. Why you never came back. Why you let me raise myself in a goddamn storage unit while you built a whole new life 2 towns over." She opened her mouth, but I stopped her with one raised hand. "And don't you dare say it was because you thought I'd be okay." The silence that followed was loud enough to split the sky. Then the boy, my so-called brother, said the last thing I expected. "I think you better come inside." I stepped inside. Not because I trusted them, not because I forgave, but because I needed answers. Real ones. Not the polished-up half-truths they were peddling like cheap perfume. The house smelled like cinnamon and clean laundry. There were school photos on the walls, family vacation magnets on the fridge, a crocheted sign in the entryway that said, "Bless this mess." You wouldn't guess the people living here once discarded their own son like yesterday's garbage. The boy, my brother, led me to the living room. My parents trailed behind like shadows. He motioned to the couch. "You should sit. There's stuff you don't know." I didn't sit. "You got 2 minutes," I said. The boy, his name was Ethan, looked at my parents, then back at me. "They told me they adopted me when I was 5, he said. "But I started finding stuff a few months ago. Stuff they didn't mean for me to see." I narrowed my eyes. "What kind of stuff?" He hesitated, then reached behind a stack of magazines and pulled out a manila folder. "Paperwork. Letters. Social worker notes. It's all in here." He handed it to me, then added, "You weren't supposed to be left behind. You were supposed to be taken." I opened the folder. Inside were copies, grainy, black and white, of a child protection report. My name was on the front. So was a case number. Notes scribbled in shorthand. Keywords circled. Neglect, financial hardship, emotional instability, removal recommendation. I felt the world tilt. They tried to put me in foster care? Ethan nodded. "The plan was to remove you and your sister. But your mom and dad made a deal, said they'd voluntarily place her with relatives if they could keep custody of you." My hands went cold. "What happened?" He glanced at my mother, who looked like she was about to vomit. "She called the caseworker the next day. Said you'd run off. Disappeared." There was no follow-up. I turned to them, rage building under my skin like wildfire. "You told them I ran away?" My father spoke up then, his voice hollow. "You were getting too smart. Asking questions. That woman from the school, she started poking around. We panicked." "So you let me go," I said. "To save yourselves." Silence again. I paced the room, trying to breathe, trying to think. And that's when I saw it, in the corner, behind the TV stand, a crate of old notebooks and VHS tapes. I opened one at random. Inside, I found drawings, mine, from when I was a kid. Stories I used to write. Maps. Dreams. They kept them. "Why would you hold on to these?" I asked, voice cracking. "If you didn't want me?" My mother sank into the armchair. "We didn't know how to be parents to you. You were always too much for us." I dropped the notebook like it burned. "So you replaced me with a kid who couldn't remember." Ethan flinched, but didn't argue. I turned to the door. "Jacob, wait," he said. "There's one more thing. In the basement." I didn't want to follow him, but I did. Because some truths you gotta see for yourself. The stairs to the basement creaked under our weight. Ethan led the way, holding a flashlight even though the overhead bulb still worked. It was cold down there, the kind of cold that clings to concrete and forgotten things. I hadn't been in a basement since I was a kid. Last one I knew had a leaky water heater and a corner where I used to hide with books and dreams. This one was neater, stacked shelves and plastic bins labeled with black Sharpie. Christmas lights. Tax records. Baby clothes. Ethan stopped by a metal filing cabinet pushed against the back wall. He crouched, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a folder wrapped in a rubber band. "Here," he said, handing it to me. "This is what started it for me." Inside were more documents, not copies this time, but originals. A journal, too, dated 2 months before they left me. I flipped through the first few pages. It was my mother's handwriting. "We can't afford him anymore. Food, clothes, school supplies. It's bleeding us dry. He's too independent, too nosy. He doesn't listen. He watches us like a little detective. If he finds out about the money, if he finds out what we did with the inheritance." I stopped cold. "What money?" I asked, voice sharp. Ethan looked away. I flipped more pages. More notes. More worry about me asking questions. Then a letter, unopened, addressed to me. My name printed in neat block letters. I tore it open. It was from my grandfather. Dated just before he died. A full page of shaking handwriting telling me how proud he was, how he knew I was smart, how he'd set aside money for me, not my parents, for college, for life, for freedom. I staggered back. They never gave it to me. They stole it. My voice came out hoarse. They left me because I got too close. Because they were afraid I'd figure out they took my inheritance. Ethan nodded. That's what I think. A million things clicked into place. The sudden move. The lies to child services. The silence all these years. They didn't think I'd survive. And if I did, they figured I'd be too broken to come back. I looked at Ethan, this kid who wasn't to blame, not really, and asked the only thing left. Why show me this? Why now? He swallowed. Because I think I was next. The air drained from the room. What do you mean? He pointed to the journal. Look near the back. I turned to the final entries. Ethan's getting older. Harder to manage. Reminds me too much of Jacob. We might have to make some changes. Sell the house. Start fresh. A chill shot down my spine. They were going to do it again, I said. He nodded. But I found this first. And I figured, you deserve to know. I stared at the folder in my hands. Proof. Truth. Betrayal in ink and paper. And upstairs, the people who'd taught me how to survive by leaving me behind, they were still sitting there, probably thinking a hug and a sorry would erase all this. They had no idea what was coming next. I came up the basement stairs like a man walking into court, not for justice, but for judgment. My mother was on the couch, hands folded, trying to look small. My father hovered by the kitchen doorway like he was planning an escape. I dropped the folder on the coffee table. They didn't flinch. You stole my inheritance, I said. No emotion. Just fact. My mother blinked. It wasn't like that. I leaned in, then explained to me what it was like. Because I just read the journal. I just read Grandpa's letter. You knew what he left me, and you took it. My father rubbed the back of his neck. We were desperate. So you sold your son. That's not fair. I slammed my hand down on the table. I was 15. I was sleeping in a storage unit and eating peanut butter with a spoon while you bought this nice little two-story with my money. The girl, the little one, peeked around the corner again. Her eyes wide. Confused. And that's when my mother cracked. Her voice rose, brittle and sharp. We did what we had to do. You think life was easy for us? You were always questioning everything. You always had this way of looking at us, like we were the bad guys. Because you were, I said. You still are. Ethan stepped forward then, standing next to me. I found the journal, he said. I showed him. My father's eyes turned cold. You had no right. He has every right, I snapped. You were planning to do the same thing to him. Start over. Again. My mother's mouth opened, then shut. The truth sat there, choking the air between us. I don't want money, I said finally. I don't want some fake apology. I want the truth. I want you to look me in the eye and tell me why I wasn't worth raising. Neither of them spoke. I waited. Still nothing. I nodded. That's what I thought. Then I turned to Ethan. You coming? He didn't hesitate. Grabbed his coat and followed me out the door. We didn't talk until we reached my truck. You sure about this? I asked him. He looked back at the house, then shook his head. No. But I'm more sure than I've ever been. We drove out of Millstone Hollow with the windows down and the cold night air filling our lungs. Two brothers, born of different blood but bound by the same wound. We didn't know what came next. But at least now, we were writing our own story. 2 days later, I stood in a borrowed suit under the glow of camera lights, my hands gripping a microphone with more resolve than I ever thought I had. Behind me was a banner for Voices for the Abandoned, a nonprofit that helped kids who'd been cut off by their families. I hadn't meant to end up here. But when I told Ethan everything I'd gone through, the storage unit, The diner shifts, the missing inheritance. He asked a question I hadn't let myself ask. What if there's more kids like us? So I called a journalist, one who'd done a piece on financial guardianship fraud and had responded to my email in less than a day. She listened to my story, asked for documents, asked to meet Ethan. Then she said something that stuck. If even half of this is true, it's not just a story. It's a scandal. Turns out, Grandpa's money hadn't just disappeared. My parents had filed legal paperwork to access it, paperwork that stated I was under the care of extended relatives while I completed high school independently. They even submitted forged school transcripts. The lawyer who helped them? Under investigation now. So yeah, it was a scandal. I told the story the way I remembered it. Plain, clear, no frills, just facts, pain, and truth. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. But when I said, they left me with 5 words, "You'll figure it out," and I did, the whole room went still. The article dropped 3 days later. Headline, "The Son They Left Behind, A Family's Quiet Betrayal and the Boy Who Survived It." It spread like wildfire. Podcasts picked it up, then daytime talk shows. Lawyers, advocates, people writing me from halfway across the country saying they'd been abandoned too, just not always with a note. Some were pushed out. Some left to survive while their families pretended they never existed. And every time I spoke, I made sure to say his name, Ethan, because he had every reason to keep quiet. But he didn't. He chose truth. That week, I moved him into my place. Just a 1-bedroom walk-up above a bar, but it had heat, locks on the doors, and no secrets under the floorboards. He took the bedroom. I took the couch. He enrolled in GED classes. Said he wanted to study journalism one day. "You sure?" I asked. He grinned. "I figure someone's got to tell the next kid's story right." We didn't talk much about our parents after that. The public pressure had forced their hand. There were lawyers, state reviews, even murmurs of criminal charges. But that part of it? That wasn't our story anymore. We weren't their sons. We were our own. The media firestorm faded like all storms do. Stories get replaced. Names get forgotten. But the aftermath that lives longer, lingers quieter. It had been 3 weeks since the article broke. Ethan was adjusting. He'd made a few friends from the GED night class, started helping out part-time at a community paper. He was finding his footing. Me? I wasn't sleeping. Not because of guilt. Not because of fear. Because of the letter. It had sat in my drawer for almost a decade, folded and yellowing inside an old book. A letter I wrote when I was 17, after my 3rd night in the storage unit. I'd found it again while cleaning. Couldn't bring myself to read it. Until now. I sat at the kitchen table with a beer gone warm and the whole world quiet. I unfolded the letter. "Dear Mom and Dad, if you ever read this, I guess part of me still hoped you might care. I'm not dead. Not yet. I got a job at a diner. I sleep near the fryer during breaks. I'm not writing to ask you to come get me. I just wanted to say I'm trying. You said I'd figure it out. I don't know if that means I'm strong or if you just didn't want to be bothered. I'm sorry I asked so many questions. I'm sorry I wasn't easier. I'm sorry I wasn't whatever it was you needed. But I'm still here. And I won't disappear the way you did. Love. Jacob ***. I stared at that last line. I won't disappear the way you did. But I had disappeared, just in a different direction. Built a wall so high that not even forgiveness could see over it. I didn't know if I wanted to send it now. Maybe it was too late. Maybe that version of me, tired, hungry, hopeful, didn't exist anymore. But that boy deserved to be heard. Even if it was only by me. So I read the letter again. Aloud this time. And when I finished, I folded it back up, lit a match, and watched it burn in the sink. Not out of anger. Out of release. Because I finally understood something. I didn't need their apology. Or their attention. Or their love. I had become the man I needed, without any of it. Ethan was quiet for days after the article went viral. Not sad exactly, just quiet. Like he was walking through fog only he could see. He still went to class. Still made coffee in the morning. But his eyes, they were somewhere else. One night, I found him on the fire escape, knees pulled to his chest, staring at nothing. "You all right?" I asked. He nodded, but it was one of those nods that means the opposite. I sat beside him. Didn't press. After a long silence, he said, "I used to think I was the lucky one." I waited. They gave me a bedroom. A bike. Birthday parties. They took me to the zoo. People used to say how kind they were. How generous for taking in a kid like me. He paused. but it always felt like I was living in someone else's house. Like I'd walked in on a story that had already ended. I looked at him, really looked. The weight in his shoulders. The shame that wasn't his to carry. I found this journal once, he continued. In your dad's workshop. A page said, "We'll raise him better than the first one." I didn't know what it meant until now. The words hit me like a gut punch. They didn't just abandon me. They tried to overwrite me. Ethan looked up. Do you ever feel like you're walking around in someone else's skin? I nodded. All the time. He blinked hard. Sometimes I think, maybe they never wanted a son. Just a story to tell. They didn't raise a son, I said. They rehearsed a performance. He let out a dry laugh. More exhale than humor. You think I'm broken? He asked. No, I said. I think you're healing. He looked away, jaw clenched. It just takes so damn long. I put a hand on his shoulder. Yeah, I said. But you're not doing it alone. That night, we didn't say much else. We just sat on the fire escape. Two boys turned men too early, trying to piece together who they were supposed to be before anyone ever gave them the chance. We didn't have the blueprint, but we had each other. It was a Wednesday when he showed up, raining sideways, the kind of weather that made the city feel like it was sinking. I heard the knock while I was heating leftover chili. Not a soft tap, a steady, deliberate knock, like someone who knew they didn't need permission. I opened the door. There he stood, mid-60s, long coat, silver hair slicked back, a scar across his temple like something out of a forgotten war. He looked like a man who'd seen things and survived every single one of them. You Jacob? He asked. Depends, I said. You selling something? He smirked. No, I'm not here to sell. I'm here to return something. He pulled a small envelope from inside his coat. It was weathered and thick, with my name written in black ink, the kind of penmanship you only see in old records and war letters. I stepped aside. Come in. He sat without being asked. Didn't bother with introductions. I knew your grandfather, he said. We served together. After the war, he opened a hardware shop. Helped me get on my feet. We stayed close. I looked at the envelope. So what is this? Insurance, he said. Your grandfather gave it to me before he died. Said if anything happened to him, and things didn't smell right, I should find you. Why now? He pointed to my face. Saw your picture in the paper. Didn't even know he had a grandson until then. The family told us you died in a car accident. I stared at him. They faked my death? He pushed the envelope closer. He left something behind. Couldn't trust your folks to deliver it. With shaking hands, I opened it. Inside was a letter, written in the same wobbly cursive as the one I burned, and a single key. The letter read, Jacob, if you're reading this, it means I failed to protect you. This key opens box 1123 at First Community Bank. It's yours, not your parents', not the state's. Yours. Everything I had, I left for you. Not because of blood, but because I believed in the boy you were becoming. Love. Grandpa. I looked up at the man, heart pounding. He nodded. He left you a trust. Property too. A little cabin upstate. It's all still in your name. Your parents never knew. I sat back, stunned. This wasn't just money. It was memory. Legacy. A piece of me I thought had been erased, preserved in a locked box for the day I came back. The man stood. That cabin, it's yours now. I'll drive you if you want. I didn't answer right away. I looked at the letter again, then at the key, then at Ethan, standing in the kitchen doorway, eyes wide with something between fear and hope. We were about to find out what my grandfather had really left behind. And maybe, just maybe, find the beginning of something new. The road to the cabin wound like a scar through hills thick with pine and fog. The old man, his name was Frank, drove in silence, hands steady on the wheel of his beat-up Chevy. Ethan and I sat in the back, a duffel bag between us full of questions we couldn't yet name. 3 hours later, we turned off the main road and onto gravel. The trees opened up like curtains, revealing a cabin that looked pulled from a storybook, not the polished kind, but one weathered by storms and still standing. 2 windows. A chimney that leaned a little too far left. Wind chimes made from soda cans. It was beautiful. Frank handed me the deed. Been in your family since 1947. Your grandfather spent his last 10 summers here. Said it was the only place he ever felt safe. I stepped inside. Dust danced in the sunlight spilling through crooked blinds. There was a fireplace, 2 worn chairs, a table with a chessboard still set mid-game. On the wall hung a photo of my grandfather as a young man. Same square jaw, same steel eyes. Ethan wandered toward the bookshelf. These journals, are they his? I nodded, touching the spines. Each was labeled with a year. A life cataloged one page at a time. Frank cleared his throat. He said the cabin was for when the boy came home. He always called you the boy. Never said your name, but we knew. I felt the air change around me. Like the walls had been holding their breath for 12 years and finally exhaled. That night, Ethan built a fire. We cooked sausages in a pan older than both of us. And when the light faded, the fireflies came. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Flickering through the trees like stars had spilled down to dance. Ethan stepped out onto the porch, eyes wide. I've never seen this many. I joined him. Me neither. We didn't speak for a long time. Just stood there, breathing in the silence. Then he said, "You think he knew how bad it would get?" "Grandpa." I nodded slowly. "I think he knew exactly what kind of people they were. And he left this for me anyway. For us. A place untouched by lies. A place that remembered who I was before the pain. Before the silence. Before the 5 words that shaped my life. You'll figure it out." Yeah, I did. And now, we were finally home. Weeks passed. Life slowed down at the cabin. The kind of slow that made space for healing. Ethan spent his mornings reading through Grandpa's journals, jotting notes, sometimes crying when he thought I wasn't looking. I fixed up the porch, chopped wood, cooked meals like my life depended on it. And maybe it did. Because in that quiet, in that steady rhythm of work and wood smoke, I found something I didn't know I was missing. Peace. One afternoon, as the sun began to bleed gold through the trees, a letter arrived. It was postmarked from Millstone Hollow. Inside, a single sheet of paper. "Jacob." We saw the article. We heard about the cabin. We're not asking for forgiveness, only a conversation. Please. Your mother. I stared at it for a long time. Then I folded it once, twice, and set it on the fire. Ethan watched silently as it turned to ash. "Regret isn't the same as repentance," I said. He nodded. The next day, we went into town, the nearby one, not the one that still bore the weight of our past. We opened a checking account in both our names. We registered for GED testing. We bought groceries and joked with the clerk. We were just 2 brothers, no longer haunted, just rebuilding. I donated the trust money to 2 causes, a scholarship fund for foster youth, and a legal aid center for kids caught in the system. Not because I didn't want it, but because it was never meant to serve just me. That fall, Ethan passed his exams. I watched from the back of the community center, heart pounding like a proud father, a best friend, a brother, maybe all 3. He came up after, holding the certificate like it was gold. "What now?" he asked. I smiled. "Now we build something no one can take from us." The world didn't change overnight. But we did. And I never again needed to ask why they left me. Because I knew who stayed. Me. And the boy who raised himself? He became the man who saved another.